Another Earth Science video. Let's do this. This is Norris Teaches Science with me, Mr. Norris. It's another Earth Science video. And today's video is the second part of talking about renewable resources. So the same video ago, I can discuss the pros and cons of different sources of renewable energy. So going back to the list, we're going to go into hydrogen fuel cells. This is a device that converts chemical energy into electrical energy, and it does so by splitting water atoms to extract the hydrogen energy for use. Now, the pros, there's no CO2 emission here. You're just messing with H2O. It's safe-ish, and there's low environmental impact. The problem is it costs a lot to make. They don't last that long, and it's really not readily available yet, as of this point when I'm making this video. Now, what is solar energy? It's the use of energy from the sun to produce electricity. There's really two methods you can work with solar energy. You got active, which is photovoltaic cells. That's kind of what you think up here. You think of like the solar panels, but there's actually something called passive solar energy. And this is all based off the design of a building having open windows where the sun is going to rise and fall, both in the summer and winter months. Overhangings for summer months, so you have shade, there's insulation. It's all about how you build your home for passive solar energy. But really, we're going to talk about the active one up here. Now, using solar energy, the sun is free. Everyone gets to use the sun. There's no CO2 emission here when using solar energy. And there's low air and water pollution, and that's from the creation of the photovoltaic cells. The cons is you need access to the sun about 60% of the time. So if you're in, like, say, a area up in high latitudes where you guys don't see sun a lot often, you're not going to be able to use this. You also need a heat storage system because the panels are going to heat up and you're going to have to find some way to store that heat. And you also have to have a collection system, and it can be very expensive. The panels can be expensive. Converting your house to it can be expensive. It does pay for itself later on, because one thing you can do is once you have solar energy on your house, you don't rely on the electric companies, and sometimes you can sell your energy back to electric companies so they can use it and sell it to someone else. What is tidal power? This is the use of water during high tide to turn a turbine to create energy. All right, so the pros or the positives with using tidal power, there's no CO2 emission, and we can predict tides. You can get an app on your phone that tells you when high tide is and low tide is in your area if you live near a coastal area. The cons, the equipment is very expensive. It's very unreliable on the west coast of the United States just because of how the shelf is made on the ocean floor and everything, and how the geological structures look. And the equipment can be corroded by the salt water. So you're going to have to replace the equipment when it gets too corroded. Wave energy is the motion of wind-driven waves on the ocean surface, and then it turns a turbine that we then get for electricity. Now the pros, there's no CO2 emission. One thing you notice about all renewable resources is that you're having limited to no CO2 emission because we're trying to eliminate that greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. And wave energy works day and night because there's always waves in the ocean. The cons of the equipment is expensive, and then just like with tidal energy, the equipment can also corrode from the salt water or from the water in general. So you're going to have to replace it. Wind energy, this is one of the more noticeable ones that people think of. This is uses of wind to turn a turbine to create energy. Now the pros, they're highly efficient and they have very low environmental impact, and they produce no CO2 emission. The cons, you need a steady wind. steady wind. So you have to make sure there's wind there most of the time, and it's steady. Means it's constant. Noise pollution, because the spinning of the turbines is going to create a noise that you're going to have to get used to. Then you're going to have to worry about visual pollution. What that means is people call them an eyesore. They don't look good. Um, that's one of the cons. They don't like how the wind turbine looks on their land. There's also damage and death to animals like birds. When people first built these wind turbines out west, they didn't take into account that there was a migratory bird that they placed the wind turbines in the middle of their migratory pattern. The birds didn't know about it, and they just kind of flew into the turbines and they died. So you got to watch that as well. Now, which alternative energy would work for North Carolina? This may not apply to people who do not live in North Carolina. I'm just going over this because this is where I teach and this is where I live right now. Solar power, we can use that almost everywhere. It's a really good idea. Tidal power, we can use that towards the coastal areas. Same thing with wave power. We can use that towards the coastal areas. Wind power, the coastal areas we can use because it's constantly wind there with your land breezes and your sea breezes. And we can use it in the mountain areas because you got the valley breeze and the mountain breeze. If you don't remember about those types of winds, go check out my wind video in a previous section, and it will talk more about how they work. In hydroelectric, all we have to do is have dams on rivers, and we can use that. There's some other stuff that we could use, but there is ways that we could use make North Carolina all alternative energy without having to rely on any fossil fuels. But if you don't live in North Carolina, go look up for yourself what energy sources can make your state all renewable. So you don't have to worry about fossil fuels and we can keep the earth healthy and clean. But I hope you learned something today. I'm Mr. Norris and I'm out for this video.